Quick introduction to new listeners. I'm Matt Pashensky. I'm here with Ian Sweeney. Ian is a person I have immense respect for as a genius level product mind. He's also a multiple time entrepreneur. He's starting a company called Beppo, which I'll let you talk about it at your leisure. I'm founder and CEO of a company called Pact. This is my second company. And so we're dealing with the same kind of perplexity I think a lot of people are of what's happening now. We have many years combined doing product and entrepreneurship, but things have changed drastically in the last few years in terms of what people are buying, how they buy it, and what they're buying is all changed in how you develop it. And so we thought it would be a great time to just record what we're experiencing and share some of what we're seeing in the field and fundraising, all that stuff. And it might be interesting, new perspective that people haven't seen. It's a very different thing for entrepreneurs, what we're seeing versus people who are building technology themselves or just the basics of LLMs and linear algebra, or VCs who I think are very overrepresented in terms of their opinion of things. So yeah, that's the background. Anything you want to add for new listeners?
Well, Matt, you nailed it. We're living and breathing it, and the conversations we have together are fun and interesting, and with other people, so we're constantly learning. And I suppose we wanted to kind of broaden the audience for that. So I'm gonna put you straight on the spot because you have. Well, let's talk about agents for a second. Are agents kind of the in the hype cycle for 2025? I don't know if it'll last a
Yeah,
whole year, but let's start with the definition. You have a great
every
view on that.
yeah, every year what AI constitutes. I remember back in 2016, Mark Zuckerberg talked about chatbots. And so we always, and then it was prompting, it was prompt engineering, and then we talked about RAG. And so each year, what constitutes state of the art and what people think are going to be the main modalities for AI adoption changes. In 2025, it's definitely agents. I love a report by Menlo Ventures, which just talked about the growth in various types of investment. And agents were at zero in 2023. They were at 12% in 2024. Investing as agents is going to be probably a big expansion based on they're looking at the curve in 2025. And then you have companies like Mark Benioff at Salesforce renaming the company Agentforce is kind of how he talks about it. And that just means he's going to be using application data that they already have access to. This is things like your customer emails and so on, and then have agents kind of do the work of human beings. But to your point, I think the definition of an agent is very unclear. I was talking with some venture capitalists. I was part of this little roundtable, and it was a bunch of venture capitalists and very few entrepreneurs. And they were saying, I don't really know what an agent is. I hear agent, agent, agent. I saw Alexander Wang from Scale on stage, and he said, like, well, whatever an agent is. So I think there's just no real definition. Even a guy like Alexander Wang does not really have a great definition agreed upon. It's still this amorphous thing. We know that the AI is going to be doing a lot more for us. But what is the impact of an agent versus just, using AI like you used it in 2023, where you're handing data over to a prompt and you're getting some output back? And so I'll start with the bad answers, because I think this is where people are right now. And a lot of people say, well, it has multi-step, it can plan, it can do stuff. And I don't think that really is a satisfying answer for what an agent is. An agency itself is someone having autonomy and going and working on behalf. And so my definition of what constitutes an agent is very different than what people have right now, which is kind of like, it can just go do work on its own. And instead I want to flip it around. And the main point is this: we all exist within social structures, right? And that means we have rules, boundaries, limitations, resources, and so on. And agency is really when you have the AI go from operating as a tool or something that I use for myself to something that can operate on its own and actually have power allocated to it. And power has a lot of different definitions, but the main ones that I want to focus on today are where the cutting edge of agents is spending budget on its own, and then having access to secret or private or secure files on its own. Those are going to be the two main blockers for agents. And so it's best, and this is a conversation we can have, instead of thinking about agents in terms of what it's capable of, internally, we think about the right way to think about agents is what a company or a person is going to allow an agent to do. And once you start thinking in that way, then I think it becomes very easy and useful to define things as agents. Does that make sense? I'll stop. It's tough to
Yeah,
think.
it does make sense. So we talk a lot about co-pilots today, and so this thing sitting beside you taking action. In your model, in your definition of an agent, co-pilot is not yet. Perhaps it's an agent in training, but it is not given the authority to take action, and that for you is a difference here.
Yeah, if you think about why we use the word co-pilot, co-pilot is not the one flying the plane. They're the person sitting next in case I
Yeah.
pass out, or the pilot passes out. And so really it's, when we think about how do we think about agents and we think about the power allocated to them, co-pilot does two things. One is generally people pay for a co-pilot by a fixed fee each month. So we don't trust it to maybe spend $5,000 on our behalf, right? If you hired another employee and you paid them $5,000 a month, for most companies, that's an extremely low price. So why don't we allocate the same budget authority to a co-pilot? Because we don't trust it yet. And so when we start to think about agents in the domain of power, trust and reputation are major components. But you don't think about the reputation of a co-pilot as you're going to give it more budget. You're just like, oh, this is the good one. I use Cursor, I use, Microsoft Copilot. But you don't really think about, hey, how much budget do I give it? And what are the ways that I'm going to tell if it's good enough? And so that's a major change that we're going to need to see with agents is it's going from I pay a fixed fee to, hey, this thing might drop $4,000 today. But if it's doing these certain things, then it's totally worth it. If it's going to generate a quarter of my pipeline for the quarter, sorry, that's a double. If it's going to generate a huge amount of my pipeline or it's going to be doing things that are extremely valuable, then it has access to a lot of budget. Right now it's fixed budget. And then the word co-pilot itself, it's secondary. It's I'm taking action and it's going to be something that's sitting next to me. I'm going to put data in and I'm going to take data out and I'm going to be in control.
If we're sitting here at the end of 2025 and 2025 is, the year of the agent, how will we know it's been a successful year in the sense of you have this particular vision of agents. So you'll be able to look back and say, look, we're seeing agents doing X, Y, and Z. What are those actions that you might think that say, wow, it's come to fruition, the
You
promise?
know, checking in on your budget for your agent each week and saying how much did it spend versus knowing that in advance, that's going to be a major sign. And then the second one is, and this is maybe a bit of a segue to the second half of the episode that we want to talk about with you, which is right now, one of the biggest blockers to adoption for the agents that we sell, because we're selling management agents. We're selling people who can go do management functions on your behalf, both research and getting people to do stuff and keeping track of accountability. So those are, I think, agent-driven things. We don't want the human being to have to go and remind people or to go look up what people are scheduled to do or expected to do. You want an agent to do that on your behalf. And when I started this a couple of years ago, I was thinking, hey, the biggest problem is going to be not trusting an agent to work with your employees. I don't think that's a problem. I think people are very happy AI. Now, what they are really concerned about, and I think this is a good test for 2025, will companies start giving completely autonomous AI systems access to customer data? That is a level of trust that very many companies don't currently, they're not ready to step over. And I think to get there, I think that's going to be the test. At the end of 2025, you can think about the levels of customer data, any type of customer information like their email address or something like that. That's one. But then as you start to get into financial information, sensitive customer data, HIPAA, everyone talks about medical agents, but the doctor, even if the doctor doesn't diagnose, they're still the one who has access to, can I access these documents? Can I order a surgery? Whereas in the end of 2025, if agents are successful in medical care, you could go on and maybe get a diagnosis, a prescription, or even, I don't know, diagnose your cancer and get an operation scheduled all by AI. Those are all the different gradations. And once you think about agents in the domain of power, you start to think how much power is allocated to these agents. And those would be useful tests. You don't think, oh, is the agent good at diagnosing cancer? It's already pretty good in a lot of cases. The question is, have we changed how we work with computers and work with AI to give them the type of power that we used to only give to human agents? And I think that's the test at the end of 2025. So that's what we're looking at. Those are some of the blockers for adoption. But the technology's there. So I think it's going to be on entrepreneurs and on product teams to start to build trust with their clients and start to put in place some of those stops to make sure the downside's pretty low and they're not going to lose customer data. That means segmenting data sets. That means, strong controls about how data is input and how it's accessed, who can access it. If you put those things in place, but then also show that the AI is accomplishing certain outcomes, has a very high rate of success, and so the benefits outweigh the potential downsides, And these are the product problems now. It's not about the quality of the LLMs in a lot of cases. It's just thinking about things in the right way. And I think agents get power. That's how to think about them. And once you start thinking, then you ask the right questions and you build the right product.
So end of 25, agents have more power than we've been successful.
That will be if 2025 is the year of agents and people are checking their budget each day to say, how much did this agent do? Secondarily, they're giving access to things that they don't feel comfortable now and buying products in places where they don't feel comfortable now. That'll be a big breakthrough. But those are hard society problems. Those are not hard technology problems. And so they generally take a little bit longer.
Okay. Second question. You had a question for me.
Yeah, and so I think that's a bit of a segue, right? Like the difficulty in selling into companies is, I think, a really good way to understand the limiting factor for AI now. The technology has come so far so quickly, and there's so many breakthroughs, and it's getting so much cheaper. So it's not about the quality of the technology necessarily or the cost. What are the reasons people are not buying AI in 2025?
I have a really optimistic view on this. So I actually would say the question that I heard you say, I've translated into my brain is, what are all the reasons that people are buying? And it's kind of a fascinating experience to sit with customers. So the media's done a fantastic job of educating the general consumer as to the power of AI. So when we sit down with customers, and I'll give you just a little bit of context as to our world, we're selling to service businesses, human-powered businesses, spend a lot of money on humans. And so when we sit down and we say, hey, we're thinking the AI could do this or do this, do that for you, have this particular problem. They're like, oh yeah, the AI can definitely do that. And I'm sitting there going, how do you know that? Or how do you understand that? You're not writing the code. But the reality is kind of today, the hype cycle is such that everybody imagines that AI can do everything. So that's awesome when you sit down with a customer like that. The second thing that's kind of really magical from a sales perspective is perhaps it's unique to us in these service powered businesses, but what we're selling against is the cost associated with a human doing this work, right? So the customer is sitting there saying, look, I've got 3 people full time doing some particular task. You're saying that you could eliminate 80% of that. That's magical for them. They have a line on their budget, call it whatever it is, a couple of $100,000, and they're comparing what you can do to solve that, and you get a percentage of that. Let's say call it $300,000. If you're going in selling CRM, a better CRM, they're saying, great, well, I spend, $3,000 a month on CRM today. So, you're going to be better. You presumably you're going to give me a better deal. So I get to, I'm going to get this for $2,000 a month, right? Cheaper and better is what I'm always looking for. So I think it's a function of where we are perhaps in the hype cycle, but it's kind of magical to be in that place right now. And in my almost 30 years of doing this now, just realized my anniversary of university graduation is next year. It's going to be 30 years.
Goodness.
I have never been in a product hype cycle like this one. A, that's moving so fast, and B, that just has people, consumers and prospects so wrapped up in it. Now, your world's probably a little bit different. I don't know if you have a different perspective on it.
The point you made about replacing human beings, I think, connecting it back to agents, when people think about AI as a replacement for human beings, that does change the pricing calculus, because in their mind, they've already indexed you to maybe $150,000 a year for an employee, or even $50,000 a year for an employee. Whatever that is, it's a hell of a lot more than SaaS, especially when it's on a per employee basis. If you can save someone 10, or you go to a company with 100 people or 500 people, what if you save 20 employees? It's just an enormous amount of money relative to, like you said, my CRM can have fewer clicks. And even if you're saving the same amount, selling it as a mode, as an agent, as someone as a replacement for labor is incredible. And it's been great for us because as at the end of 2024, you started to see budgets opening up in a way that they hadn't a year earlier. So people were making hires. And one of the things that's worked for us very well in the last few months and has led to very rapid growth for us. Hey, I don't want to hire managers, because we think of ourselves as agentic management. And so if I make the offer to someone, hey, you're going to pay this amount, that's a lot relative to SaaS software, but it's going to be a fraction of the price. And there's a little consulting, and we'll just be hand-holding. We're going to make sure you get over this hump, and you're going to start adopting AI. Yeah, it's a totally different ballgame than we were in 2 years ago.
Okay, good start. We're almost out of time. I have a quick bonus question for you, and you may or may not have an answer. This stuff is moving so quickly. What have you seen in the last week, 2 weeks, read about, thought about that has blown your
The
mind or
big
is at least
story, and
notable?
this is going to date this episode. I think all this changes so fast. They released the DeepSeek, the Chinese kind of competitor to OpenAI, and the price has come down tremendously in terms of attaining that O1 level of quality. And that's made us much more aggressive. Substantial budget for AI that we're trying to burn down, and we're never kind of burning it as fast as I think we should. And then suddenly, that was like a 100x decrease in price, and you've seen the quality of what OpenAI in the subsequent couple of weeks, what they've released, and how much of the API they give you, and the prices. Something that was prohibitively expensive even 2 3 months ago, like the O3 High, is suddenly like, oh, maybe we could use that as part of our process. So a whole new range of applications that we could provide for our customers that used to seem kind of outlandish are now possible. And it's still expensive now, but at the rate of decrease of costs and some of the distillation and the processes that they've used in the inference layer to lower those costs as well. The cost coming down is just amazing. So it's like, let's just use and so a lot of our stuff that used to be hard, we were just like, let's just use the latest model and do it all in AI instead of having our rules or anything like that. So it's flexible, faster development. And yeah, we've just seen the cost come down. So we're just pushing much more aggressively into using those types of much more advanced models.
I'll give you my one for the week. It's at the tool level actually as well. So GitHub Copilot released this thing called Agent Model. And really what it does is if anybody's used Claude to write code, we're now in a place where a product manager can go to something like Claude and say, hey, I'm using a React framework. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Can you create me this page that lists these things out? I want buttons here. In the back end, it needs to look at this database table. You can do that all, type a prompt into Claude, copy and paste into your IDE, and away you go. GitHub Copilot released this thing called Agent Model, which essentially streamlines that whole process. You can sit now in your IDE. If you don't know what an IDE is, it's where you write software, right? But you as a developer now can type a prompt into your IDE and it will generate code, working code. It'll operate the code. It'll look at the terminal, see what errors you have. What does that mean? Why is that important? It's kind of the same thing as what you said, right? What used to take you 8 hours to write in code now with Claude was 4 hours, and now they've chopped another hour or two, another 10 or 20% off that. It's blowing my mind how quickly this stuff is going. So, but as you said, we've now dated the episode, but I think both of those are worth noting.
Keep it short, keep it easy, and we'll do another one soon. Well, this has been fun. See you next time.
All right. Thanks, Matt. See ya.
Yeah.